So we have one more talk before our breakouts. And so I think it was so telling that Dr. Sampson noted that, the emotional toll of the disease adds to all of our fatigue. And so this next session is about just that. We've mentioned for 2 days all of the challenges that we have as patients, as clinicians, as industry working in our field, and that the unspoken and often overlooked mental health toll of all of this disorder can really just amplify the symptoms and really add to our challenges. So I said at the beginning of this meeting, please be good to yourself. Please take care of yourself. One way I'm being good to myself is by inviting this next speaker. She is a licensed social worker and therapist. She's a founder of the Wellness Associates of Greater Rochester. She is also she is a longtime friend who remembers me when I was young and before ALD became part of my vocabulary. She is a doll. See, we can't even look at each other. So I would like to introduce Megan Clifford, who's going to come and share her perspectives with us.
So while we're waiting, I wanted to thank Kathleen for inviting me. I just came back from the Dominican Republic with my partner celebrating our anniversary. I literally flew in last night and, we kind of been off the grid and I was just here. I'm like, has anything happened in the last week?
Oh, no.
No? No. Oh, okay. Okay. So I'll tell you a little bit more about myself while we're talking about this. I am a clinical social worker. I'm also a trainer and consultant, and I help companies and organizations learn how to reframe their organizational culture to be trauma informed and trauma responsive. So it's a big passion of mine is to help people understand that, hey, all of us are going through things, whether we're dealing with changing illness, whether we have
difficulty with COVID, whatever it is, we all are always carrying things. And that in all the different organizations and workplaces that we exist in healthcare systems, that we need to understand and be sensitive to that. All right, looks like my slides are up. All right, so this is called Doing What Matters. Embracing psychological flexibility amidst uncertainty. So what's psychological flexibility? It's being able to roll with it. And as Kathleen said, live your best life. So as we go on, I want you to think about this phrase, rich and meaningful life. So when we're able to enhance and build our psychological flexibility skills, it can lead us to living a more rich and meaningful life. I didn't say a happy life. I didn't say an everything's great life. I said a rich and meaningful life. All right. So I'm not one of those natural, guru, let's all om for a moment, although I am a big fan of mindfulness. We're going to talk about that for a second.
But you've been listening to a lot of stuff for a long time. You didn't really get a break before me. So just take 1 minute and just take a deep breath, however that works for you, and just stretch any part of your body that feels good to you. If you choose. The second thing I'm going to say is, if you're tired and your brain is overwhelmed and you'd like to leave, that's okay with me. I'm sure this will be available. My slides will be available. I will be available until tomorrow. So you have permission to leave, no matter what you think. So if you would like to stay, thank you. And I'm going to tell you just quickly where this comes from. So acceptance and commitment therapy is a third generation behavioral therapy. So everyone's familiar with mental health. You might have heard cognitive behavioral therapy. So I'm a behavioral therapist. Basically what that means is I help people identify what things are getting in the way of them living that rich and meaningful life. And especially if there's some behaviors that are contributing to that, take a look at those. So when I learned about this approach about 10 years ago, I was like, okay, I'm going to train. Changed my life, and I've been a therapist for 20 years. 15 years at that point. Oh, it was stage training. So it's based on the trainer I went with is Rusty Harris. He's from Australia. And it's based on his work in his book, The Happiness Trap. So I do recommend his work, and if you want more information, check out the book or talk with him. So there are 3 components to psychological flexibility. Open up, be present, right? How often do we hear that? Be in the present moment, right? And to what matters. So I don't have to tell any of you here that we can't control anything. Like when you use the word control, there's really not much we can control. We can influence, we can reduce impact, but we really can't control very much at all. So when we speak about opening up, actually, I'm going to pause because I know I put a short video on here just to give you the Russ's point of view on how this class goes.
All day long, humans do things. Even if it's just sleeping. Now, some things we do move us towards the sort of life we want. When we're behaving like the sort of person we want to be, doing things that make life richer, fuller, more meaningful, we can call these towards moves. Now, other things we do move us away from the life we want to live. When we're acting ineffectively, behaving unlike the sort of person we want to be, doing things that tend to make life worse in the long term, we can call these away moves. Now, when things are going well, when life is giving us what we want, it's pretty easy for us to choose towards moves, to act effectively, doing stuff that makes life richer and more meaningful. But unfortunately, life just isn't that easy most of the time, and it doesn't give us what we want for very long. So as we go about our day, all sorts of difficult situations and difficult thoughts and feelings will arise. We may experience emotions such as worry, we may catastrophize, predict the worst, we may have thoughts popping up that I'm not good enough, I'm a loser, I'm a failure, life sucks, it's all too hard. Now, unfortunately, we easily get hooked by those difficult thoughts and feelings. And almost every psychological problem, from stress and anxiety to depression and addiction, boils down to this basic process. We get hooked by difficult thoughts and feelings, and we do away moves. However, there are times when most of us are able to unhook from these difficult thoughts and feelings and choose towards moves instead. And the better we get at doing this, the better life gets. So that's what this approach is all about. We're going to bring in some helpers to help you get a lot better at choosing towards moves. As a first step, we're going to help you identify your values. Who you care about, what matters to you, what sort of person you want to be, and use those values to guide and inspire and motivate you to do more towards moves. And we're also going to develop unhooking skills so you can get a lot better and a lot faster at unhooking yourself from all those difficult thoughts, feelings, emotions, and memories. The more we develop our ability to unhook and choose those towards moves that really matter deep in our heart, the greater our quality of life, the greater our health, happiness, and well-being.
So opening up. So a lot of times when we're stressed out, we do things to get rid of that stress. We may eat.
We may talk to somebody about our stressors. We may use some unhealthy coping skills, which we can understand. If you're using a coping skill, it's because it works, whether it's healthy or not, right? So the difference between acceptance, how we might think of it in a traditional sense, and commitment therapy, is we're going to open up to all feelings. We're going to open up to pain. We're going to open up to sadness. We're going to open up to despair. And we're going to say, hey, come on in. And you look at me like, Megan, like, why would I want to do that? Because if we don't let those feels in, you've probably heard the term feeling the feels, then we can't feel the other things. And all feelings pass. Just as despair, hopelessness, pain passes, so does happiness, so does joy. But we're not going to be able to live a rich and meaningful life if we're not giving ourselves the openness to experience everything. So this is what we mean in that triangle, I'll go back to that for a second, about opening up. And these are the three components. All right, so we're going to open up, and our brain is wired to protect us. Back in caveman days, it's all like, alert, you can get eaten by a bear if you're not looking around all the time. You better be careful, that bear's going to get you. So our brain's always trying to be alert. And anytime we feel these negative feelings, it's giving us a message. And when we have difficult things happen, our brain is already trained to be like, what if that difficult thing happens again? It's going to happen again. I got to alert. It's going to happen again. But that's a story that our brain is telling us. Well, I'm not the same person I was 5 minutes sitting there. And this isn't the same situation from the last time I gave this talk. So every time I'm in a different situation, there's an opportunity for a different outcome. So that's part of being psychologically flexible. And the way that Russ Harris talks about it, and I like him, his approach is, I'm not going to fuse to what has happened, and I'm not going to fuse to what might happen. And you're saying, Megan, I'm living with a life-changing disease, a life-altering disease. Okay. I can't ever imagine what that is like. I'm not somebody who lives with ALD. I don't have children who have ALD. But when I'm looking at the life-changing things, I can stick in that. I can hook in that space. And it's going to pull me away from the other things that are important to me. And that's where the do what matters portion of our triangle comes in. What matters to you? What are your values? Have you ever really sat down and done a full values assessment? So I'll get back to that in a minute. And then our be present. You know, I was never really like a mindfulness person. I thought it was kind of, mindfulness. The only way we can be psychologically flexible is if we are grounded in the present moment. Again, we can't control what's going to happen, what is. Every situation is going to be different. And it's very hard when our brain is like, hey man, you got to be really careful because this thing happened before. And you know, we had our MRI and it was good, but you know, what if it's not good this time? And getting linked into those thoughts and feelings. So that's what being present means. We will pause and have another stretch. Whatever you need to do, because actually one of my next things for you is going to be getting into your body. So when we're looking to be present, part of that is, when you hear that word grounding, it's getting into our physical space, because we all know mind-body connection, right? So when we're in our physical space, our minds are like, okay, I'm cool. I'm in a physical space right now. That means I have some choices over what I do next. All right, so one last thing about opening up that can be really helpful. It's just a little 3 N's, I call it. You know, this stuff's going to come in. These feelings are going to come in. And you know what I like to say? Thanks, brain. I appreciate you trying to alert me to this. You're doing your job. So I'm noticing the thought or the feeling or sensation or the memory, and then I'm naming it. I'm normalizing it. Yeah, brain, that makes a lot of sense that you'd be telling me that story. And with that, maybe I've done something where I've had that story go and I became pretty anxious or irritable or fearful, and maybe I engaged in a behavior that wasn't the kindest. Maybe I, snipped at somebody or something like that. So notice, name, and normalize can be really helpful, because normalize leads to self-compassion. And we're going to get back to that in a second. All right, so I'm going to teach you 4 small things. This comes from Amelia and Emily Nagowski in their book Burnout, and I find these are great strategies for getting present that are 1 minute long. So with this one, I'm going to invite you, if you're comfortable doing so, sit in your chair in a comfortable space, and if you're able to feel comfortable with your feet on the ground, go ahead and do that. We're going to do what's called box breathing or square breathing, and if you're familiar with that, we're going to do it for 1 minute, just 1 minute. Okay, so I want you to follow the video along here. And we're going to go in on the count of 1, hold on the count of 2, out on the count of 3, and hold on the count of 4. You'll see it in the video. All right, so I know we're doing this doing that in a huge, large conference room, and you're tired. You can do that anywhere, anytime. You can find that on YouTube. You can get used to doing it yourself. You can put some music on. It's 1 minute of the box breathing, and what that does is when you're feeling those difficult thoughts, feelings, sensations, memories coming in, and your brain's like telling you all this stuff, it settles your brain, and your brain will change the story that it tells you. Your brain will be like, okay, if I can feel these things, then right now, right in this moment, I must be okay. So the next thing that I wanted to teach you, first of all, breathing is the first thing that the Nagowski speak about. So breathing you can do anywhere. There's no excuse for not being able to breathe, right? So don't tell me, I don't have time for mindfulness. The second thing I want to mention is what we call drop anchor. Drop anchor was developed by Russ Harris, and it's a technique where, again, we learn to open up and notice what's going on around us, going on in our thoughts and feelings, get grounded in the present moment, and turn towards the things that are important to us. So that was that triangle. Open up, be present, do what matters. So this is a little acronym I just like to show folks. And we're going to do a 40-second exercise in a second. Acknowledge your thoughts and feelings. It's totally fine if I'm PISSED off. I'm not judging that. It's fine if I am somebody I love is having a medical crisis. It's okay for me to not be angry, to be present, to be okay in that moment. I'm not dismissing the intensity of my loved one's struggle. And then engage in what's important to us. We'll get that in a minute. So you can even see in the graphic that I put, this is an exercise that's used a lot for folks who live with chronic pain. So again, I'm going to ask you, if you're comfortable, to sit in your chair as comfortably as you can. If you're able to push your feet into the floor, that's great. And if you can't, that's okay too. And if you're okay with it, I'm going to ask you to just start off the exercise closing your eyes, and then there'll be some directions throughout the exercise. So again, this is the second thing that we recommend when we're talking about getting ourselves grounded. And this is getting into our body.
Take a moment to just acknowledge the thoughts and feelings that are showing up for you right now. Just notice what your mind is doing. Maybe it's racing, maybe it's worrying. Notice what you can feel in your body. Are there any painful feelings coming up? Or maybe it feels numb or empty. Maybe just taking a moment to put into words what it is that you're feeling and thinking. You might think, here I am feeling angry, or here's my mind worrying. Now come back into your body, maybe pushing the feet into the floor, straightening your back, perhaps taking a breath or two. Maybe moving your arms or your legs in some way. Get a sense of control over your arms and legs, for example, by pushing your fingertips together or the feet into the ground. Maybe taking a gentle stretch and just getting a sense of coming back into your body right now. And now engaging with the world around you, maybe by opening your eyes and ears, maybe taking the time to look around and notice what you can see and hear. Maybe noticing what you can touch, taste and smell. So there's a whole world around you right now. Maybe there's thoughts and feelings coming up, and there's a body here that you have control over, and a world around you that you can engage in. And just noticing where you are right now and what you're doing. And consider, where do you need to put your attention right now to make the most of the situation that you're in.
All right, so I should explain what dropping anchor meant before I did that. So, you know how when there's a big storm and you're, crashing waves and all that stuff, and you're yourself and you're in your little boat, and you're resolute, you're resolved. I'm gonna fight this storm. I'm gonna get through this storm. I'm gonna keep going. And your boat keeps going like this and going like this and going like this. The idea with drop anchor is, if I drop my anchor, if I get back into my mind and my body, I'll be steady until the storm passes, versus consistently fighting the thoughts, feelings, memories, and sensations that take me away from doing those things that are important to me. Again, let's have self-compassion. Like, of course my brain's going to do that. It's wired to do. So that's the second thing that the Nagowskis talk about, the two sisters that wrote the book. So the first thing is breathing. The second thing is getting into your physical space, whatever that means for you. So drop anchor is just one example. There's other things, certainly can send out resources through Kathleen and the team. So the next thing we're going to talk about is my favorite one. Oh, I got to tell you one thing. For those of you who have, I have teenagers, but this can work from, probably 5 or 6 all the way up. So my girls now know, if mom does this with her feet, and mom does this with her hands, and she's pushing her hands in like this, and my muscles are all tensing up, and however that looks for you, doesn't have to be the way I'm doing it. And I go, they know to back off. Mom's doing the thing again. I've trained them. They're children of a therapist. They're screwed. Sorry. But it actually is a nice modeling for them too. It's really important. I don't know about all of you, but emotional regulation was not modeled for me in the 80s. Not dissing my parents. They didn't know any better. But that's a gift we can give to our children and our partners, is to model being emotionally regulated and help folks learn these different techniques just by modeling them. All right, so you can thank me for that tidbit later. This is my next, our next one that the Nagowskis talk about. Okay, not an endorsement for Coca-Cola. But did you see the contagion of the laughter? That's the point of that video. So do you see how contagious it became? He started laughing. The next person started laughing. I saw some of you laughing by the end. Laughter is a very quick way to ground ourselves. Because if you're laughing, you can't laugh from up here. You laugh diaphragmatically, and that gives you a deep breath that goes up to your mind and says, if I'm laughing right in this moment, right now, I must be okay right now. So again, don't give me any excuses that you don't have some access to a 1 minute something that makes you laugh. All right, I'm on a mini dachshunds binge right now. All right, you can go on any social media, you can just put it into YouTube, whatever makes you laugh. So I'm telling you that now, identify these things ahead of time. So when you get to that space where you're like, your brain's telling you all this stuff, all these difficult thoughts and all these feelings are coming, what can I do? Oh, I know that looking at that one photo of my daughter when she put lipstick all over her entire face makes me laugh. I'll bring that up. So thinking about these things ahead of time and having them in place gives us the opportunity to have our toolbox. So laughter, that's my favorite. And it's quick. All right. So the hug. Start off by telling you I'm not a hugger. I'm Irish. We drink and we fight. I'm not a hugger. And part of that is I have ADHD, and so I'm my body's sensitive to hugging. And not everybody is a hugger, especially based on how your pain level is, right? Maybe that's not for you. But the idea of touch on our bodies automatically triggers our parasympathetic nerve. Okay, so you medical people, you guys know what that is, right? Parasympathetic nerve. So our sympathetic nerve is this thing when we're stressed out that gets us going like this. And to get our brain settled, we need to engage our parasympathetic nerve. So a 20-second hug, that's what the research says, 20 seconds of some kind of physical touch. And again, I need to be aware and be sensitive that for some patients that might not be comfortable for you, so that might not be the technique you're going to use at that time. But you don't have to hug another person. I'll show you this with the microphone. I'm putting a lot of pressure on my body right now. Digging my feet in. And I can do that to myself because my body feels the pressure. Again, you all know your bodies, for those of you who are patients, so you do what feels best for you. But knowing if we do that, we're activating that parasympathetic nerve, And my mind in that moment is going to say, okay, just for right now, I'm okay. I don't know what's going to happen 5 minutes from now. I'm not thinking about what happened 5 minutes before. But right now, I'm in a safe space. You can also hug a pillow. You can hug a stuffy. Whatever you want to hug is fine. And again, to bring my lovely children back into this, they will come up to me, even knowing I'm not a hugger. It's kind of a joke in our family. Mommy, can I have a 20-second hug? I've had a rough time. I had a rough day. And I let them hug me, and I'll be like, no, I'm not a hugger. Of course, they're my children. But that is something, again, I model for them to say, hey, it's okay to come to me or to come to their stepdad or their dad or whomever and say, like, hey, I need that right now. And that's something I like to normalize for people, and especially people who may have, again, maybe haven't grown up in family systems where that was something that was comfortable. And that's okay. Yeah, I mean, I tell my kids straight up I'm not a hugger. And what's nice is they'll be like, hey, Mom, is your body feel okay right now for me to have a hug too? Which I think is really cool because they know I have ADHD and they know that my body sometimes gets sensitive. So hug away. And the fifth thing, and I didn't put a slide up for this, the fifth and most important thing in terms of completing our stress response and being grounded in the moment is to turn towards our connections. Do people know the term hide the body friend? Anybody know what that means? If I killed someone, that person would help me hide the body. This girl right here. I was so grateful when Kathleen and I were talking about this. And this was unrelated. She was taking care of her mother at home. And we started talking about this. And Kathleen and I see each other maybe, once every 3 years? Even though she's taking care of her mom and stuff, life's happening. We maybe talk like once every 6 months. She's a hide the body friend. When things in my life have gone bad, she's been there for me, no matter whether it was hadn't talked to her in 3 years or 10 years. We have a mutual friend that we've known for years. He lives in Houston. Haven't seen him in 13 years. He's going to be my first call. Well, I'll FaceTime you together. So thinking again about who are the people in your life. And I want to encourage you, there's such beauty in the connection you have in ALD Connect in your community. I think it's also important to identify people who may not be as what's the word I'm looking for? May not be as close to your lived experience that are also those connections for you. Because Kathleen, please tell me if I'm wrong, but I've in some ways peripherally walked the journey with Kathleen and her son John and her family. If I know something, if I know the MRI is coming up, I'll send a text or she'll post about it or whatever. But I'd like you to, Kathleen, push back too if you don't agree with this, but I think it can be good sometimes to just have a conversation about something that's not related to your living with ALD. Right? It's okay. You all are people who value your health, the health of your children, right? But it's okay to take a break on that. Kathleen preaches self-care all the time, which is a good thing. But don't think you're doing anyone a disservice because you're not killing yourself all the time. Advocating, researching. It's okay. You don't have to spend 100% of your time. And that might be easy. You could say it's easy for you to say, Megan, you don't have that illness. Okay. But I do want to say it's okay for you to identify. We're going to go to this next. What other things do I also want to include that contribute to my rich and meaningful life? Caring for my loved one, caring for my health. That's a really wonderfully important thing, but that's not all of you. All right, so finally, we're going to get to do what matters. So do what matters means, what do you value? In your deepest heart of hearts, what do you value? So I'm not saying I value family, I value friends, those are domains. So in my professional life, in my leisure time, those are all domains in our lives. Values are consistent across those domains. Some domains might be more important to me than others, and that's okay. No values are right or wrong, maybe just different. So I'm just going to give you a couple examples here. So my value, probably one of my primary values, these are my 6 primary values. Everything I do is rooted in these, is connection. Always has been, always will be. My profession as a social worker is, connect. That's what I do. I made it my work. That works for me. My husband's a corporate trainer. That's not, he connects outside of his work, but that's not that important to him. Cool. Right? That's all right. He connects in other ways. But that's my value. So how am I living that value as a mother, as a partner, in my advocacy with ALD and other things that are important to me in my life? How am I living in that value? And I'm not saying how do I accomplish that value or how do I get to this space. There's no ending to that. It's if I'm doing my best to live in this value with the choices that I make, despite the fact I might have some really uncomfortable thoughts, feelings, emotions, then I can feel that I'm living that rich and meaningful life. So take a look at your values. And again, I'm certainly happy to send out an assessment if folks want to do that. But thinking about what's important to you and how that goes across different domains in your life. How does that how does it show up for you? Again, I'm a behavioral therapist. If I'm going to work with somebody, I'm going to say, if I'm taking a video of your life, how do I know? How do I see that you're living in the values that you tell me are important to you? All right, so the last exercise I'm going to do is something that I find very helpful. It's called Choice Point. And this, again, was developed by Russ Harris and some of his colleagues. So Choice Point, I mentioned hooking earlier, hooking into thoughts or feelings, hooking into things. So we have a situation, a thought, a feeling, an emotion, something that's causing us uncomfortable feelings, discomfort. I don't like this, right? So we're going to say, hey, all right, get it? That's normal. So what am I going to do? What am I going to do to acknowledge that, hey, it's okay to feel that way? But even when I feel that way, I'm going to do things that bring me towards my values, towards that rich and meaningful life. So as you can see with the arrows, situations, thoughts, feelings, right? So what are the things that you do? Do you think? Do you do things that you think? Do you have overwhelming emotions? Do you have behaviors? Do you have whatever it is? I'm going to give you an example in a minute. That pulls you away from your values. What are the things that I do? And some of these are hardwired from childhood. Some of these are just, coping skills or automatic thoughts, right? What am I doing that's pulling me away? And sometimes these things aren't conscious. Right? That's why I go to a therapist. Obviously, I'm going to pitch therapy. And then we have those things that pull us towards. What are the things I can do that I know, even if I'm feeling or having thoughts, feelings, emotions, memories, sensations, even if they're not things I'm super happy about? What are things that I can do that are still going to move me towards the kind of life that I want? Call them committed actions. Have anybody ever heard of SMART goals? Short-term, measurable, achievable, right? So when we talk about setting goals, we want tiny goals. So I always think of, people are like, I'm going to join the gym. I'm going to lose, whatever. And again, that's whatever that means for you. What is your big thing? Okay, I'm going to lose 20 pounds. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Whatever it might be. what's the likelihood of me joining the gym, losing 20 pounds if I leave that goal just up there? If I set this huge expectation and then I don't reach it, I'm going to feel pretty crappy about myself. If I say to myself, I should be doing this, I should be doing that, I should be eating better, I should quit drinking Diet Coke, I should. Is that serving me? Not really. Don't should all over yourself. Should is a really bad word in my office. Don't should all over yourself. But if I say, you know what, let me take a look at my calendar. Are there 2 spots that I can block off during the week that maybe I can, you told me this earlier, that I can sit outside and get some sun on my face, or I can read a fluffy Colleen Hoover book for anyone who knows Colleen Hoover. What can I do to bring myself some comfort? And just doing that is going to give me maybe a little bit more push towards, yeah, you know what? I think I will go and look and see what my YMCA has to offer. Maybe it doesn't end up being an exercise thing. Maybe it just ends up being a connection with a program that they're offering. So what are the things I'm going to do even when my thoughts and my feelings, my body is telling me, knowing that if I get grounded and think, hey, this is what's important to me, that I'll still be able to do tiniest committed action. So it's not, hey, I'm gonna, do the biggest thing, and we're just gonna set ourselves up to be disappointed. I'm gonna block off 2 hours on my calendar. If I end up getting into a gym, okay, cool, that's great. But I'm blocking off that space. So Kathleen gave me some permission to kind of use, some of this is from some experiences that she has had with her family. And some of it's, I just kind of made up to the best of my ability, because these are the kinds of things I would work on with somebody in therapy is let's identify the situation. So again, I'm thinking it in the context with John, who's 20 now, and watching Kathleen going through the scans, right? So the situation that's causing me these thoughts, feelings, sensations is that we have our MRI coming up soon, our 6-month MRI. So what are some things that, I might be thinking and feeling? Anxiety, despair, irritability, I'm not sleeping, I'm ruminating. Okay, so these are all these things that are going on for me. So what are the things that I'm doing, the thoughts that I'm having, the actions I'm taking that are pulling me away from the life that I want to live? So maybe I'm perseverating on what the last scan's results are. I can't control this scan. I may have been able to influence with all the things that you have learned here and all the behavioral recommendations that are made. I ignore my own body's signals. My stomach starts to hurt. I have GI issues. I have headaches. And I ignore those because I've got to take care of this, and this. I get into conflicts with people. We all have a fight, flight, freeze mechanism in our brain. You may have heard of that before. And when we feel scared, we feel anxious, we're going to go right into that primitive space. I'm either going to fight, I'm going to freeze, or I'm going to run. And that stuff happens in relationships. And a lot of times that can be unhealthy in our relationships when we don't have the ability to ground ourselves and understand how to regulate that emotion. I'm going to read anything and everything I can about ALD, all of the, and I know you all do this, this is why you're here. You're here for this, right? But what happens with anxiety is that it's a cycle. So you get a thought, and your brain's like, ooh, we do not like that thought. So we're going to go and we're going to do something to relieve the discomfort of that thought. So maybe I'm going to go read something. Then I can avoid the anxiety. Maybe I'm going to call somebody and we're going to talk it through. We're going to talk it through and we're going to talk it through and we're going to talk it through. That could be helpful, but if we keep talking it through, It's going to keep the anxiety going. Maybe I'm going to have a few drinks. So not using alcohol appropriately, maybe misusing alcohol. So maybe I'm going to do these different kinds of things that get me into a cycle that's not serving me. This is something I forgot to say. The phrase that goes in my mind every time I'm doing this: is this serving me? Is hanging out in this space of what's going to happen or what did happen in this moment, is it serving me in living in moving towards my rich and meaningful life? Maybe I sort of mentioned that, like the over connection, which you're like, Megan, you just said connection is your value. It is, but you can get to a point where you can over connect. So I spend a lot of time working with actually gun violence victims in Rochester, New York. We have a really big gang issue there. And I'll get in this rabbit hole and I'll talk to everyone. I'll keep talking, and I'll keep reading, and it actually really pulls me away from being able to do the work that does bring me joy and meaning, because I've exhausted myself, because I've overdone it. So it's okay to say, you know what, you can take a break on that. So what are the things that we're going to do that are going to move us towards the kind of life that we want? So I'll just mention, focus on grounding ourselves, right? So if I'm grounding, I'm going to be more clear-minded to say, okay, here are some of the committed actions that I've identified. Review your pre-MRI routine. So this is what Kathleen was telling me when I said to her, when John was going in for his MRI, it's like, what do you do, to prepare? And she said, you might want to say, I think you said, John chose his favorite movie. You had a special dinner, and they developed a routine that felt safe and comfortable for John, knowing that going into having his MRI was going to be anxiety provoking. The other thing I absolutely love, which I just learned about from her yesterday, was the switch flip. You might have seen that in the analogy that she uses in the kids book, right? And she talks, I'm going to let you read it. But wow, okay, we're going to go in and make sure that the switch in your brain, we want that to be off, and that's what we're working towards, is keeping that off. And if it gets switched on, we're gonna work with all the people who care about you and to get you to get that switch turned off or dimmed. So I love that you had your routine, right? And then checking in, your routine for your 5-year-old is going to be very different for your routine for your 10-year-old or your 15-year-old, and then by the time they're 17, you're like, I'm doing a routine with you, Mom, whatever. As I mentioned before, connect with your outside friends. We never want to minimize the power of connection within your community, but it's okay to seek connection on something completely outside of that. It still fills your bucket up, right? Kathleen and I joke about our shared Diet Coke addiction. And then review your values assessment. So as I did this work and started to use it in my psychotherapy practice, everything I do, for the most part, is connected to one of those 6 values. And it doesn't matter what domain it's in. I have 3 or 4 domains that are more important to me than some of the others. No, we're all going to have different things. That's okay. No one's better than another. But what can I do is going to keep me grounded in that when I can't control anything else that's going on? And if I'm able to do that, I think I might be on my way to living a rich and meaningful life. So that is the end of this piece. I know it's a little weird with some of these things on asking questions around this, because it's more of an interactive, but does anyone have any questions around these concepts or things that you can do, or sharing with other folks what works for you?
Yes, I just wanted to give a shout out to more ALD programming. I really enjoyed all those exercises, and Jesse Torrey does a monthly mental health call.
Woohoo!
And if you haven't checked it out, all of it's got good content, but she always ends it with a guided meditation. Feet on the floor, the breathing, and I usually want to fall asleep because it's usually almost 8 o'clock and it's time to go to bed. But it's pretty relaxing. So if people haven't checked it out, I highly recommend it.
Third Thursday.
The third Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Ooh. Ooh. Hey, thanks for bringing that up because it did trigger me to think of something. Maybe
7 p.m. Eastern.
Eastern. Maybe you can't make that for some reason. Anyone
It's on the
heard-
ALD Connect website.
Yeah. Anybody heard of the Calm app or Headspace? Love me the Calm app. When I can't sleep, there's a 10-minute guided meditation. I like the white noise. I like the sleep stories. There's so many different things, right? And I'm not the kind of person that when you talk about meditation, I'm gonna be sitting on a pillow for an hour. Like that's not me. You try doing that when you have ADHD. But if I have a 5-minute guided meditation in breathing and grounding, that can be just as impactful. So you don't have to have an hour to do these things. Like I showed you before, you can have a minute and you'll have a significant effect. Other suggestions? Oh, I see somebody over there.
There you go. Just real quickly, I was thinking about this as you were talking about grounding. This past week, my son had his MRI. It was clear.
Woohoo!
Thank you. Super excited. But leading up to that, I had all these feelings, right? And I was dealing with some other stuff at work and at some other things that were stressors in my life. And my husband was like, "You're grumpy. You're so grumpy." And I was. And it was kind of affecting my family. And then I realized, oh my gosh, we have so much to be grateful for. And so every day since he sort of called me out, I really anchored into being grateful.
Anchored.
And
I
I
like that.
didn't take a long time doing it. I wasn't like all day, I'm so thankful for everything. But I was just like, I was like quickly, anything I could think of, in 2 minutes, I was like, okay, the food I ate today, my kids are healthy, I have clothes on my body, my house is warm. I just went through this list, and it sounds a little crazy, but it helped because I was just dealing with so much uncertainty in that moment, and I was like, these are the things I'm certain about, and the gratitude really helped me. So I just wanted to share that.
That's a great one. I would suggest with things like that, it's a great idea, but also when you write those things down, when you get them out of your head and on paper, it's even more impactful. Gratitude journal. And this goes for self-care too. I have a 8 domains of self-care. That's a whole nother topic. But writing those down and then sharing them with somebody that will hold you, like I like to say it, gently accountable. So if you know and you're aware of what causes you when you're starting to get overwhelmed, burned out, like irritability, snippy mom, that is it. I now know that. Sometimes we're not even conscious of it. But if I can start to recognize, okay, this is what's going on in my body, I'm feeling really tense, all this stuff, If I can recognize, okay, I end up binging 12 hours of Netflix versus just watching a show or two. What is it that, happens for you? And my husband will say, I've noticed in a very kind way, because I trust him. Most people couldn't say that to me just because I'm kind of like, but he can say, hey, I've noticed, have you been going to your class? Have you talked to your friends lately? Those kinds of things. So I think sharing, I love the gratitude. Thank you for sharing that. Writing it down and then sharing it with somebody who can hold you gently accountable to that. So I want to say one more thing, but are there any more questions or comments or things that folks do that could help the rest of the group?
Oh, where is it? Well, I was just going to quickly say that one thing that I do that when I'm running around and it seems like I have no time and I'm getting stressed out is that it's really easy for me to bounce from place to place and to slam into my driveway, park the car, run back in the house, like I've overscheduled myself. But one thing I've learned, and it's accessible to many, is that I will pull in the driveway and I will listen to one more song. So it is my song choice. It is me by myself. It is my jam. My teens don't have to make fun of me. And I can rock out like it's 1996. What? Oh, I have so many songs.
Meatloaf, Kathleen, Celine Dion.
So obviously,
That was
Celine
what's
Dion.
going on in 1996 for us.
That's right. That is actually true. But so just putting that out there as even just stealing one more part of a good song.
Have a driveway moment.
Driveway.
Driveway,
Yes.
and then my kids don't know I'm home yet.
Is to have a personal mantra. And it works for some people, not for others. It can be as simple as I am important. And anytime something happens, you may not have control over everything, but you can say to yourself, I am important. Somebody does something, they don't listen to you, you tell yourself, I am important. That is just one suggestion. Everybody can do what works for them, and it might not work for everybody, but just a suggestion.
By virtue of being human, we are all fully worthy. Don't even get me started as a therapist on how much of the issues that the people that I work with are grounded in shame, and you're not worthy, right? You are inherently worthy. All of us are, just by being people, being human. Thank you for sharing that. Just to combine two things, love the mantra. And I remember when I was struggling, I'm in full recovery from generalized anxiety disorder, but when I was in my 20s, I was definitely not. And I had a therapist that suggested that as well. And she said, on the in-breath, say just this moment, and on the out-breath, say, wait, just this. What'd she say? Just this moment, just this thought, or something like that. Okay, I just totally blanked on it, which is weird because I still use it. But it was nice because it had the two phrases, and it went in just this moment, just this breath. That's what it was. But in and then the out. So I love your worthiness one. Obviously, I'm a huge fan. But also, can you combine the air breathing with a mantra? It can be helpful. Okay, so I have 4 minutes left. And I'm going to be here till tomorrow. So if you have any personal, or questions. So I'm going to open a can of worms here. And I was sitting here before when I think the physicians were talking about the importance of mental health, right? I'm a social worker. That's where I started off. That's my first passion. I like being a therapist, but social workers connect. And there's nothing I like better than solving a problem and finding the connection. So I am fortunate that I work with an organization called the National Council of Mental Well-Being. I'm a mental health first aid instructor. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that. But one of the beautiful connections I got over COVID was connecting with instructors all over the country. So therapy doesn't have to be psychotherapy, mental health therapy, diagnosed therapy. Do we know oftentimes chronic medical conditions go hand in hand with diagnosable mental illnesses? Yes. Well, that makes sense, right? Having a neutral, objective person that you can talk to and get support from is extremely powerful. It's, we still deal with the stigma, still deal with it. Keep trying to break down that stigma. If you are having a hard time finding a therapist, please contact me. Because people say therapy is really, really important, but it's hard to get a therapist, which is 100% true. Because I have this network now that I'm very grateful to have all over the country, I might be able to help you find somebody.
And if they're in New York?
And if you're in New York, you can certainly contact me. And the beautiful thing I know in New York and most states is you can see therapists via telehealth. So you can see anyone in the state. So you come to me, I have some of you might remember Johanna Bond from a couple of years ago. She specializes in chronic illness. You can live in New York City and work with her. Your insurance will cover it. But over the years with my, I'm going to find the answer to this mentality, I'll do my best to help you find the answer to finding a therapist that could be a good match for you, that hopefully will take your insurance. And if they don't, help you figure out a way to get it paid for. So feel free to email me or catch me at some point today. And please, yes, reach out to a mental health professional. Taking care of your emotional well-being will inevitably help you negotiate the challenges of the physical health challenges that you live with every day. Ooh, so do they get the soda and the candy and the popcorn now?
They do. First, I want to say thank you to Megan because we're so grateful